welcome in Wednesday afternoon again, and you know what that means. Jesse Montano, Meghan Angley here, DNVR Avalanche Podcast. Meghan, it seems like the week just flies by. I'm always looking forward to our Wednesday shows. How are you doing this week?
I'm doing really well.
Good.
I always look forward to this show, too, and it did feel like it flew by.
Yeah, it flew by. I know you've got some automotive issues you're dealing with. Things are getting sorted out, hopefully.
It's been a slow-moving process in ways that benefit me, though.
Okay.
I've just had this rental until I learn more, so I actually think it gets worse once I learn more.
No, okay. All right, well, so we're fine with this kind of like automotive purgatory right now.
Exactly.
We've got a lot to get into. Again, we've been very fortunate this offseason. We have been very fortunate because we need stuff to talk about on this show. And the NHL, the league in general, has given us no shortage of that, especially up north with one of the most talked about teams, really any time of year, any season, whatever's going on. There's always a lot of news surrounding the Leafs. But Meghan, it's pretty warranted this time around. There's a lot going on there, a lot of kind of unknowns. There's new information changing every day. We talked about it on Monday, the Brendan Shanahan press conference, really kind of unprecedented in terms of the way that the NHL and their teams deal with stuff, transparency, things like that. So we wanted to talk about that, but we figured instead of us continuing to kind of speculate from however many thousands of miles away, you reached into your bag of contacts here, and we are joined by, I believe we've got him backstage here, Dave McCarthy, NHL.com, SiriusXM, and NHL Network correspondent, all in the Toronto area. Dave, we very much appreciate taking some time out. How are you doing today?
It's great to be on with you guys. Thanks for having me. And Meghan, let me just tell you, I feel your pain when it comes to your automotive troubles. If I ever have an issue, I open the hood as a mere formality, and then I call a guy because I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
You know, the last thing I did is I added washer fluid, and there's this part of me that's like, did I do something wrong?
Did you put that in the right slot?
Exactly. I don't think that was the problem, but perhaps.
Dave, let's just kind of get right into it here because there is a lot to unpack. The Maple Leafs have certainly kept you busy this summer. What is just kind of the vibe around Toronto right now? Are we descending into full-scale panic, or are fans kind of saying, let's let this play out, there needed to be a change?
Well, I'll tell you what. It's always calm. Always very rational in this neck of the woods. Nobody ever. I'm kidding. No, there's a lot of panic, a lot of consternation right now, and I think a lot of it primarily is not really so much on the decision to move on from Kyle Dubas, as Brendan Shanahan came to last Friday. That obviously is getting some discussion. But you know, the world moves forward, and now a lot of the discussion, a lot of the focus is centered around, okay, well, what impact does that have on the future of Auston Matthews in Toronto, who is eligible to sign an extension on July 1st, but also has a no-move clause kick in on July 1st. So that's really where the focus is now. He was close with Kyle Dubas. His agent, Judd Moldaver, has a very good relationship with Kyle Dubas. So now the fact that Dubas is no longer in the fold is leading some to be concerned about how this might impact Matthews moving forward. That said, I don't think it's really going to have that much to do with it. But I can understand why some people look at that and say, "Oh, geez, that's probably not ideal now, is it?"
Right. So, I mean, we might as well get into this room, right, with the Auston Matthews stuff. I mean, we've heard things over the last couple of years. Does he want to stay? Does he not want to? I know on locker cleanout day, Auston Matthews came right out and said, I want to be in Toronto. Just kind of what is your pulse on that whole situation? Where does Auston Matthews stand? Or do you have a good pulse? I guess with everything up in the air right now.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to profess to sit here and say I know what's going on inside Auston Matthews' mind. All I can do is go on the conversations that I've had with him. And the last time I talked to the man would be 9 days ago at locker cleanout day. Now, in saying all that, a lot, as you guys very eloquently laid out in the intro, has transpired since then. That was prior to Kyle Dubas coming out on that Monday and saying that he wasn't sure that he wanted to be the general manager anymore. That was before, obviously, Brendan Shanahan decided, after hearing Kyle Dubas speak in that way, say, oh, I don't think Kyle Dubas is the right guy for the job anymore. So how that has affected his thought process, I can't say. What I will say is when we last spoke to him, he said that it's his intention to return to Toronto and to be here long term. Now, what I think that means is I am willing to take the money that I know I'm going to get from you. That's what that means. Now, he will get that money. The question is, guys, what money is that? And that is what I don't know the answer to yet. Is he interested in doing what Nathan MacKinnon did in your neck of the woods, where he pushed the bar just ever so slightly past Connor McDavid to become the highest paid player in the game, which I think, what was it, $100,000 more, I think, right, than Connor McDavid? So, I get that. And he deserved to be the highest paid player in the game. And I think Matthews is in the position where he can command money like that. But if he is of the mind that I want a true max deal, where I'm looking at high 14s, 15s, that's where I think you have to take a step back and really consider if that's the right road to go down, because that's a lot of money, and I don't know how you build a team when you've got a guy that's eating up that percentage of the salary cap. So that's kind of where the situation stands right now, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out in advance of July 1st, and then the days soon after he becomes eligible to sign.
And I know Megan's got a question for you, but I just want to build on that really quick because you mentioned the Nathan MacKinnon comparable, and you almost think, gosh, was it maybe a little bit easier to give for the Avs to give Nathan MacKinnon that money, with them having been on the cusp, but then actually winning the cup before he signs the deal? Does the fact that there's been such a lack of postseason success maybe? Is that part of what calls into question for you? Like, you need to pump the brakes before you give this guy a blank check.
Oh, I do. Absolutely. Look, I mean, Nathan MacKinnon dragged the Avs on his back to a Stanley Cup championship. As Brian Burke always told me, if you have a parade, nothing else matters, right? And no one questions you anymore. So that's what Colorado had. And I don't think I said last summer on Hockey Today on NHL Network Radio, when somehow I was managing to do 3 hours a day in July and August. Prior to Nathan signing, I think he signs 12-6. He's due to be the highest paid player in the game, but I don't think he's going to take that much more than. And I was right. Yep. So you can't really complain with what Nathan MacKinnon got. If Matthews comes out and wants high 14s, 15. In the net 40 times a year automatically. Sometimes he shoots it in the net 60 times. He's won a Hart Trophy, all of that. He can command significant money. That kind of trend-setting, landscape-changing money to the economics of the whole game, that would be a bold ask based on his resume of success right now. And that's why I think you'd have to really look long and hard and say, is this really the right way of going about? If you move on from Auston Matthews, you're not going to get the best player back in a deal. But man, oh man, he's not nearly the best player in the game. And to be paid, I'm trying to do math on the fly here, which is always a risk. $2.5 million more than the highest paid player in the game. I don't know. It's a lot of money.
Yeah. Megan?
I was curious if Dubas was someone you came to know in covering the team.
Yeah. No, I had a good relationship with Kyle. I think he was a guy that did a lot of good while he was in Toronto. I thought he built out a really good program. He installed a good culture within the team. The way in which I think his biggest impact in Toronto was the way in which he went about treating people, and not just the players, but throughout the organization, from his assistant general managers to the players to the media to the guy that opens the door in the loading bay. He was really good about that. When players had a family issue, he was really good about making sure they were taken care of, as you should be nowadays. Like when Luke Shen was acquired, and he played great for Toronto in the playoffs, but that was right in the midst of his wife being like 5 or 10 days away from giving birth. And you never know, apparently, when you're that close, it could come at any time. And they were out in Vancouver. So he let Luke stay out there until the baby arrived, everything was settled, everybody was good, and then let him make his move to Toronto. And that took about 10 days. He played the one game while the Leafs were out in Western Canada in Calgary, and then he went right back to Vancouver. Now, I thought that went a long way in terms of selling the team around the league as, look, this is a place that I want to consider going because I get treated well here. Now, a few years ago when Ilya Mikheyev, right around Christmas time, had that skate cut his wrist, and it was a really, really serious injury. And you think about Ilya at the time, young guy, barely speaks English in a foreign land, and he's got a deeply traumatic injury. You take any one of us, put us in Russia, and put us in the exact same scenario, we're scared out of our pants, right? But Kyle stuck with him for several days on the road to make sure that he was taken care of and that he felt comfortable and all of that. So, Kyle did a really good job on that front. But I do also think there's room to criticize him based on the results that were shown on the ice, which were not that great. He came in when expectations were high, and he won one playoff round in 5 years. So I wouldn't have been against him continuing on as GM. I thought he'd improved as he was in the job. But I also think it's reasonable to say that, you know what, after 5 years, maybe it is just time for a fresh set of eyes.
Too, but in looking at then the offseason, there's a lot of other important decisions to be made outside of prioritizing Matthews and an extension. You have something that needs to be done with in net if you're looking at qualifying Samsonov, and also your pending free agents. I was just curious what the urgency then is for filling the GM spot presently, even though there is someone acting in the interim ahead of things like free agency and the draft, and if there's any leads you have for someone who might be good for that position.
Right, deeply urgent is the time frame. There's not a lot of time because, as you pointed out quite rightly, Megan, the draft's just around the corner. There's a lot of holes that need to be addressed on this roster. It's not just Matthews and William Nylander who are due for extensions, but there's a lot of unrestricted free agents that are going to be moving out the door, where there will be a lot of roster turnover. So you got to get the new guy in. You got to get him up and running. Where are we right now? May the 24th, something like that. Days blend together. But say they have a GM in place by the end of next week. That's June the 2nd. Within 2 weeks, it's just about draft time. You got to get the guy an opportunity to get familiar with the organization, identify UFAs that they have that they'd like to retain, guys that they have that are UFAs that they'd like to let walk out the door. As you said, what are you going to do between the pipes? I think ideally you'd like to retain Ilya Samsonov. He was very good, but they had him on a bargain deal this year where he was making $1.8 million. He's going to ask for some money. He deserves to ask for some money. How do you fit that in? Matt Murray, what do you do with the last year of his deal? He's making $6.25 in cap. It's a little less than that because Ottawa ate some. I think it's 4 and change. But he's due eight sheets in real money this year, right? So that becomes difficult to move a contract like that. If you want to, go to a team that needs to get to the cap floor, they'd love the cap hit, less enthralled with paying 8 sheets of real money. So that's going to be difficult. They at least need that cap space. So there's all kinds of questions that need to be addressed. That's why they need to get a GM in much sooner rather than later. As for a candidate, what I'm hearing is Brad Treliving is a leading candidate right now. Brendan Shanahan suggested he wants some level of experience and acumen in the general manager that comes on board. Having worked in a Canadian market, I think is beneficial as well. So to me, right now, I would suggest that he's the leading candidate to take on the job.
So that's player personnel. Obviously, we know Sheldon Keefe and Kyle Dubas had a very good relationship as well. In your opinion, where does this kind of leave Sheldon Keefe?
Well, man, if I'm Sheldon Keefe right now, I can't be all that comfortable, right? I mean, it's just a really tenuous position to be in. In terms of a percentage of him being back next year, like I wouldn't put it at 0, because who knows? Maybe whoever they hire, maybe it's Brad Treliving comes in and says, you know what, look, I like the job that Sheldon Keefe did last year. I think there's some player personnel issues that need to be corrected, maybe some different types of players to be brought on board. But I like the job the coach did. That's entirely possible. But in saying that, I would put it at far less than 50% that he returns. If I had to put a percentage on it, maybe 20% right now. Because typically speaking, you bring in a new GM, they'd like to bring in their coach. And then at this point, same thing goes, as I said, for Dubas. Sheldon Keefe's been here for a long, long time. They've won one playoff round. Maybe it's also time for a fresh set of eyes, a new message being delivered behind the bench.
It's coming out after the locker room clean-out day is that much of the core wants to remain here. Can you put to bed any rumors of Willie Nylander coming to Colorado?
Oh, I hadn't heard those rumors. Do tell, Megan.
We might have started them here.
Oh, did you? Oh, so what you're telling me is Willie's intriguing in Colorado. Look, I think a lot of it's dependent on what happens with Auston Matthews. Willie is classic Willie. When he was asked about his ability to sign an extension as of July 1st at locker cleanout day, Willie's like, I mean, I've got over a year to sign a contract, right? So Willie's never in that much of a rush for those type of things. But I think it is largely dependent on what happens with Auston Matthews. If Auston comes on board and commits to return long term, I think William wants to be a part of that, because I think the team will continue to contend. If Auston ultimately says, you know what, pulls the old Matty Tkachuk, and wouldn't that be funny if Brad Treliving is the GM and he gets a star American player 2 summers in a row in Canada telling him, you know what, thanks, but no thanks. If that's what Auston says, then I think William would look at that situation and say, you know what, maybe I'll go to market and see what I can get. And maybe, look, he'll get some money. He shot at the net 40 times this year. He's going to be able to command a lot of money. And then you put yourself in a position where you can pick and choose your spot and go to a team that you feel you can contend with. So I think nothing gets decided on William Nylander until it is clear the direction in which the Auston Matthews situation is moving.
Dave McCarthy, NHL.com, SiriusXM. We've kept you longer than we told you we would, so I've got one last one for you here. Just kind of your opinion, Dave. What do you think happens, with everything we were just talking about? Do you think Auston Matthews signs the extension? Do you think this core 4 really kind of just runs it back with some changes coming at the higher up levels? And, they're saying, hey, we have a great roster that we feel really good about. We're just going to try again.
Well, look, it's a good question, Jesse, because I could absolutely see that being the case. And I had a few colleagues at Locker Cleanout Day saying to me, how can they bring it back yet again? How can they do that yet again? The market just won't stand for it. And I said, really? You really don't think it'll stand for it? Because here's how that would work out. Everybody 10 days ago was all up in arms and agitated because they lost in relatively meek fashion to Florida. So everybody goes on Twitter and pounds away, and I'm so angry, you got to blow it up, blah, 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 blah. Then we get to where we are now. They hire a new GM, so that's behind us. And then it's in August and everybody forgets about the Leafs. Believe it or not, people forget about the Leafs for like 3 weeks a year in August. And then you come into training camp and the core is back, and everybody starts getting excited again. There's a few questions about, how's it going to be different this year? And then into preseason. And then what's the mark of the Leafs, guys, is that they're an all-time regular season team. So we'll be sitting here at the end of October next year, and Mitchell Marner will have 15 points, if not more, in 12 games. And Auston Matthews will have 10 goals, and Willie will be cooking, and all the little fansies here in Toronto will be all like, "Oh, look at this! Mitch he's almost 2 points a game. Oh, look, can you believe it?" And then on you go, and you're in the playoffs, and you roll the dice, and you see what happens again. So yeah, I could absolutely see the core being brought back, and I don't think it would really be much of an issue. Now it comes down to, is that the right question? When you're in a position where you have a core which is extremely talented, and you're getting to a point where contractually there's some moving parts, but you don't have to make moves this summer if you don't want to, it becomes really difficult, I think, to blow that up voluntarily to the point where if you trade a Matthews, if you trade a Marner, if you trade a Nylander, you're probably not going to be able to contend next year in the way you would have if you did nothing to the core and tried to build out around the edges yet again. It's very difficult to voluntarily blow up what is a chance. It's a chance to win. They haven't won. You guys are right. They haven't won, but they have a chance if they can finally put it together. You move one or two of those guys, you don't really have that chance. You're not a legitimate contender. So that's why I would be really surprised, to be honest with you, if all four of the core four, Matthews, Nylander, Marner, and Tavares, are not in Leaf uniforms come October, whatever the first game of the year is.
Dave, we so much appreciate you taking the time out. Like I said, we took more of your time than we said we would, so we appreciate it. Dave McCarthy, NHL.com, SiriusXM, NHL, and NHL Network, at Dave A. McCarthy on Twitter. Thank you so much. And I honestly, man, we have 20 more minutes worth of stuff we get to you, so we'd love to have you back on again this summer and keep the conversation going.
Oh, look at that studio audience.
That's
I'm always
right.
a phone call away for you guys.
Those are real applause.
And it didn't feel like you kept me very long. I bet they are, Megan. I bet they are. Thanks, guys.
McCarthy, like I said, NHL.com, SiriusXM NHL, does great work in the Toronto area. That is a beast of a market to have to cover, a tough team to have to cover, and Dave does as good of a job as anybody.
Absolutely.
Was there anything that kind of jumped out to you about that, or do you want to wait? There was actually a lot there. Let's unpack it after.
Good call.
After this break here, because there was a lot that I want to get into, and genuinely, we have to have him back on. He was fantastic.
Oh, yeah. I had more questions crop up, and I was like, okay, he looks like he is on vacation.
I know. I looked at the ticker at one point, and I was like, oh, gosh, I told him 15 minutes pre-show, and we're already up over 20. So I felt bad, but, I mean, he really was. He was fantastic. I had a lot more I wanted to get to him with. This is the DNVR Avalanche Podcast, brought to you guys by Breckenridge Brewery, the official Breck Brew, the official beer of DNVR. Use that Breck beer locator at breckbrew.com to find the nearest store to you selling Breck Brew. They are available in all 50 states, so it should be pretty easy to find a liquor store near you. They really are. They're one of my favorite beer companies, I guess. Yeah, they call them a beer company, right? Yeah, they're one of my favorite breweries. I've said it before on the show. I'm not like a huge beer guy yet. I haven't found a Breck Brew that I don't like. I'm typically not an IPA or a dark beer guy. They take enough time to make sure that their beers taste great. They're not just packed full of alcohol. They're a genuinely pleasant drinking experience. Always love, whenever we're here at the bar, especially during the season, I love that we do have all of their beers here on tap. We have the cans, all that stuff, because you can really kind of try everything out. I really do. When we do parties, barbecues, now the weather's getting nice, I just go get a Breck Brew, like the variety pack, and there's literally something for everyone. They got the seltzers. Now that it's getting warmer, the rain has finally stopped. Pick up some of those seltzers. They're refreshing. They're great for sitting out on the patio. Like I said, use that Breck Beer locator at breckbrew.com to find the closest liquor store to you to pick up some Breck Brew for, like I said, weather's getting nice. There's going to be barbecues. You and I got a
I was going to call it out. I was excited.
Very nice invite to a party this weekend. We'll bring some Breck Brews there. So head on over breckbrew.com. Also brought to you guys by Colorado Golf. Join over 75,000 golfers with the Colorado Golf Association today and receive an official USGA handicap with worldwide access to score posting and GPS tracking. I heard RK talking about Colorado Golf on the Broncos pod, and he was going on and on about the fact that you get a handicap. And he said, it said it's just very helpful, and it's all online. You have your membership, all of that good stuff. So as someone, he's a big golfer, and he was just going on and on about, like, that by itself is worth becoming a Colorado Golf member, is getting your official USGA handicap. Membership means more at CGA. Members get the opportunity to play exclusive courses around the state, such as Aspen, the Club at Riviera, the Pinery, and much more. You also get access to exclusive member content with offers and discounts from national and local companies, including Imperial, Golf Tech, PGA Tour, Superstore, and more. Learn more about the Colorado Golf Association today by visiting coloradogolf.org. Use the code DNVR5. You're going to get $5 off your membership. Again, that's coloradogolf.org. Use the code DNVR5. You're going to get $5 off your membership at Colorado Golf. DNVR Avalanche Podcast. Jesse Montano, Meghan Angley. We've got Tiff running the board. We just spoke with Dave McCarthy, NHL.com correspondent for Toronto. A lot to unpack there. You asked the question that I was going to ask him, which was about the core four and the players saying they wanted to come back. It was also reported last night by Chris Johnston on TSN Insider Trading that right now the message that Brendan Shanahan is delivering to those top players is we plan on having you all back next year. Megan, just kind of what did you think about the point he was making of if you trade one of those guys, you're really kind of shifting the window that you're in?
It's tough because similar but different. When there is some big change, like we saw with Arizona, or I guess the looming uncertainty that's in Arizona, it affects players' decision-making for the future.
Totally.
And almost similarly, but in hearing especially that Matthews had a good personal working relationship with Dubas, I wonder the influence of some of this uncertainty, how it might affect a player's decision beyond just Matthews. It could be a Nylander or a Marner on their future with a team. And I also wonder if there's any loss of trust because of how things ended in this season that makes them feel less confident in this window moving forward, that makes them inclined to look elsewhere and outside of Toronto. But I have to agree with Dave that I think he's right. They're as competitive as they can be when that core is intact. And so it does make a huge difference if one of those players feels any bit differently, if some of those things that I'm speculating there happen to be true, and there are players with an inclination to look elsewhere, that does sort of blow up that window. I mean, the comparable, and it's really hard to do with Colorado because they have the track record of success attached to this current core, but like if Cale Makar somehow wasn't in Colorado next season, I would feel differently about the level of compete for the team, though I would still have a lot of confidence in those players that remain intact. It is a fair point that there is so much of the future of the Toronto Maple Leafs that hangs in the balance of Auston Matthews' sole decision-making.
Right.
And I think that it puts them in a really interesting position to have so much on one player's shoulders. And there's still this uncertainty surrounding the team. Like, until they name a new GM, I don't think that really gets alleviated in any way either.
Right. And I thought and it was funny the point that he made about how, you have the conversation of, like, how could they run it back, especially when you're talking about the argument of, the market won't stand for that. And he makes a good point. Yes, they will. They always will. The running joke here in Colorado is the Rockies had one good season where they got swept in the World Series, and they're top 10 in attendance every year. Now, I know reading Patrick's piece from a couple weeks ago. That's maybe changing a little bit this season. But the point stands. It's like, especially in a market like Toronto, the building will be sold out.
Oh, absolutely.
It'll be sold out. The ratings, local ratings will be through the roof. The media that will be being consumed around it is insatiable. Of course, the market will stand for it. Again, the part that I find interesting, and the four of us talked about this last week, coincidentally the night before all the stuff with Kyle Dubas happened. I do sit there, and Dave acknowledged it when talking about the contract situation around Matthews. Nathan MacKinnon signs the deal last summer to make him the highest paid player in the NHL. I was at the signing that they did at the golf course, and the Stanley Cup is sitting on the table as he signs the contract. That makes making him the highest paid player in hockey extremely palatable, right? If for any reason Joe Sakic, Chris McFarland, Josh Kroenke was there, if any of them had any, gosh, this is a lot of money. Oh, yeah, that's right. We're fine with this. That is the one hard part for me, Megan, that does make it hard for me to rationalize how they could possibly run it back. You've run into the same brick wall over and over and over again, and just when it looked like you finally broke through, the wheels just came completely off. And people can make the argument that they outplayed the Panthers and stuff like that. That core four was terrible in the second round. Their production was, however you want to shake it, however you want to look at the games. At the end of the day, the numbers are the numbers. You're only as good as your record. You're only as good as your stats. And that core four really kind of went away, and that has been the problem in their first rounds in the past. They haven't gotten enough production out of those top guys that you are either already paying a lot of money to, or the point that Dave was making, maybe paying the most money to. I don't know. I think they probably will end up running it back. I just don't know internally. Forget, again, the market will be there. What tells you that you can run that back and make Auston Matthews the highest paid player and extend William Nylander? Like, what tells you that any of that's a good idea?
It's hard, too, because we talked about it in the regular season, how this is Toronto's opportunity, because the team will never look as competitive as they did this year. It's very unlikely, in my opinion, that they're able to keep Ryan O'Reilly.
Totally.
And
especially if you're keeping the core four.
Exactly. And I think he was a huge component in why they did have success through the first round. And I'm going to draw another comparison here in a second, but obviously there is a track record now of star players not showing up in the playoffs specifically. It does sound like there were injuries behind the scenes, Matthews specifically being one playing through something, and then obviously losing Samsonov due to injury. Goaltending is huge in the playoffs too. I wonder if there's any way to have this reframed entering October of next year if the Panthers do win the Cup. Do they feel a little bit differently about this loss then? Like, well, we had these injuries, and we lost to the Stanley Cup champions. Maybe that is what this is fueling this confidence to run it back. Is the way I compare it is the Avs in this last season, if not for injury, I think people felt still were competitive enough to go back to back, though absolutely still not as competitive as the year before, losing Kadri, losing Burakovsky, question marks surrounding Kemper versus Georgiev. Those were very valid question marks.
There's footage of me on CBS All Access 2 nights before the playoffs saying, I think they can win it again. So, yeah, you're right.
And with the acknowledgement that, but they're also not as good as last year's team. So I wonder if there's a little bit of that, too. Like, okay, Toronto, we won't be as competitive as we were in this last season. We just can't be. We can't retain all of the pieces that were so good. We didn't have some luck on our side. Maybe that's what's fueling this confidence of run it back, pay Matthews.
It's you made a point there that I wanted to build on because I thought it was a great point. And now the lights came on and just like
it distracted me.
Fully distracted me. You were talking about. What's actually funny when you said if Florida wins, maybe that changes. I actually thought you meant the other direction. I thought you meant they might look at that and say, "Well, look at what they did in the offseason, a year removed from winning the President's Trophy." Everyone saying this is a juggernaut. They're finally going to, overtake the Tampa Bay Lightning as the big brother in Florida, only to get swept out of the second round by those Tampa Bay Lightning. And then they went into the summer and they said, we don't know if we can keep Huberdeau. We don't know if we can keep Weegar. We're really scared that this window may slam shut just when it seemed like it was opening.
Yeah.
Let's make some moves here. And they moved out money. They brought back Matthew Tkachuk, who we knew at the time he was coming off a 100-point season, high-end player. They felt more confident that they could get him extended rather than Huberdeau and Weegar. So they put that money to good use there. And that was kind of where I thought you were going, was if Florida wins the Stanley Cup, could that lead to a shakeup in Toronto where it's like, we want to make a move that doesn't take us out of this competitive window? Because part of the point that Dave was making was, well, if you move those guys, if you move a guy like Matthews, can you really get better? And I think it would be hard to say that you get the best player, but I'm purely throwing these names out for example. You can replace these names with any like players from any team in the league that you can. I'm just going to use the example. If the Avs and the Leafs made a trade, Auston Matthews to the Avs, and you sent back, for example, Devon Toews, Alex Newhook, and a couple first-round picks that Toronto can do whatever they want to do with. I don't know. Like, how much are you saying, does Devon Toews, as a true number one defenseman, can play shutdown, can contribute offensively, can run a power play, can kill penalties, gives them a different dynamic on that back end that they've had. And again, I'm just pulling those names out of a hat. But could any team sell a Toronto Maple Leafs, or could they sell themselves internally on, well, if we make them like this,
they need somebody compelling enough to convince another GM opposite of to be interested in that.
Because again, like there is a comment here, you Tkachuk trade. You lost Johnny Gaudreau, you signed Nazem Kadri. Like there was a lot of changes there. I'm going to be interested to see how they look next season, because I think that will kind of be the true litmus test for, did both of these teams come out feeling good about the deal? But again, I look at a team like Toronto and I think that's got to be something that's at least on your radar. And really, I use it as the example, but like Devon Toews, whether it's Auston Matthews and the Toronto Maple Leafs or not, you have to imagine the Avs are looking at that same type of deal of like, okay, we don't know if we can keep Devon Toews and Bowen Byram and Mikko Rantanen. You're not moving Rantanen, so does it make sense to go to another team and say, hey, we have an extremely high-end defender. The last couple of seasons, he struggled a bit near the end of the year this past year, but like for the last 2 seasons, he's probably been a top 5, no worse than a top 10 defenseman in the NHL. Would have been a top pairing guy for Team Canada last year. Can we make some type of flip here that makes everyone happy?
I think that's you raise a great point too as to why this relates to the Avs in some capacity. Why to look at Toronto or to take it a year behind that and look at what Florida did.
That last comment.
That is funny. To see the relevancy. I think that this is something to earmark and just pay attention to for the future, because if this does end up happening, there's another conversation to be had about marketing the game and bringing about star players to new markets. And it's sort of refreshing because it is stars moving into other markets, and maybe the bit of refresh that happens is good for the growth of the game overall too.
Totally.
In refreshing it. Like, I have to imagine, in looking at how Toronto is as a fan base, there are mixed feelings about Auston Matthews presently, just because it has been hard not having something to show for this player who is the top of the league every year. And I do have to wonder then if something of a refresh is needed. Because we're even just looking at Gaudreau and Columbus, and it's like that wasn't an immediate fix. There are some things that remain to be seen.
Right, there's pieces there to build.
Absolutely. That I think we should be looking at keenly, though, and this is where it could relate to the Avalanche one day, even in this offseason.
Seriously, I mean, genuinely, again, I floated it on the show on Monday, really just kind of tongue-in-cheek to give us something to talk about on Monday. But, like, you are right, Megan, that don't turn your nose up at any of this stuff. With the offseason that we saw last summer and some of the big moves that were made, starting with Johnny Gaudreau, leaving the Calgary Flames, way out of left field pick to go to the Columbus Blue Jackets, then followed by the Matthew Tkachuk trade. There's just been some bigger dominoes that have fallen in the last couple of years. And then you look at a league like the NBA, and I think they maybe do too much of this stuff, where you've got star players changing teams and requesting trades and like constantly. So maybe you don't necessarily want to get to that level, but like I agree with you. Like it would be, I think it would benefit a lot Auston Matthews going to a different market. You know, from a league standpoint. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but you're right. Like it could be, it's a refresh. It gets the NHL in the headlines. It gives people something to talk about. It gives ESPN a story to run. Here's a 60 goal scorer near the top of the league every year. And they traded him because they didn't know if they could keep him. And instead of letting him walk for nothing and this, that, and the other. So like you said, I'm at the point, especially after what we saw last summer, I am not scoffing at any of that stuff. It could end up that they just run it back. But with a change at the GM level, and you bring a great point up of if Brad Treliving, as Dave McCarthy told us, is truly who most considered to be the front runner, that guy's got a very recent track record of doing this kind of stuff.
He's willing to do it. Right. You know as much.
Right. And so they're going to be a fascinating team to keep an eye on this summer. And the one name that I don't think is all that unrealistic, because it wasn't us that started the William Nylander to Colorado. It was Jeff Merrick.
Oh, that's more legitimate.
Toronto-based media. Jeff Merrick, Sportsnet, he has his own, I think it's like 2 or 3 hour show every day in Toronto. And he was the first one that said, gosh, if they were to move on from him, wouldn't that be a fit? And seriously, if I told you tomorrow, Devon Toews for William Nylander 1-for-1, what would you think?
You're
probably going to say what I'm...
I'd want them to have something settled with Byram before that.
That's not what I thought you were going to say. That's a way better thing than what I was going to say.
And honestly, I don't think that is impossible. I think they can settle up with Byram, but that needs to be the priority first and foremost. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's like this is, a chain reaction kind of thing.
Yeah, it's the first domino that falls.
Yeah. What were you going to say, though?
Well, I was going to say, to me, I honestly would feel like that's a little bit of an overpay for William Nylander.
I would also agree. I don't want to understate what Devon Toews bring to the table. It's just next year, the potential of losing him for nothing is the incentive there. It's not, screw Devon Toews. He's not valuable to this lineup. He's hugely valuable. I just don't know his future in Colorado beyond next season.
Right. But I mean, really, it's because of that uncertainty that, and again, I want to reiterate this, that Devon Toews is an elite defenseman and the Avs are an elite defensive team with him on the roster. But the theme of all of this is if you aren't sure you can keep him, which again is the boat that Toronto's in with multiple guys, if you aren't sure you can keep him, does it benefit you to try to flip him for something that's at least close to that level or fills a need elsewhere on the roster, gives you a 2C because you feel confident about Bowen Byram? These are all conversations that are being had. And with Toronto going through the changes that they're going through and the talent that is at the top of that roster, you'd be crazy to not at least poke around. I mean, Devon Toews and a first for Mitch Marner. Maybe you don't even need the first. I don't know. Sign me up 7 days a week. It's just that to me is, like you said, why this stuff is relevant to keep an eye on for the Avs. The Avs are staring down changes as well. And you just got to keep all of your options are on the table right now, in my opinion. Keep all of your options on the table. Also, keep Shady Rays on the table. Did you get Shady Rays?
I did.
Did you get some? Oh, you got Aviators, right? Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Biggest thing about, I was trying to think of a way to say don't leave your Shady Rays on the table, but you can leave your Shady Rays on the table because even if they get crushed, someone sets something down on them, they get knocked on the floor, stepped on, whatever, Shady Rays will replace them for you. Backed by lost and broken replacements. No questions asked. They will send you a brand new pair. Wear your Shady Rays with confidence. Wear them anywhere because if you lose them, if you break them, they will replace them for you. I've mentioned it pretty much every time I do this read. I worked in this industry for a long time years ago, and one of the things that always frustrated me about it, even within the industry, was you couldn't get high-quality eyewear at anything less than outrageous prices. Shady Rays has found a way to cut right through that. They give you really high-quality stuff, great-looking shades, polarized, non-polarized. They got iridium lenses. They got gray lenses, whatever you need, and at a reasonable price. And better yet, if you go to shadyrays.com, use the promo code DNVR, they're going to give you 50% off 2 pairs of polarized sunglasses so you can try the shades that over 250,000 people have rated 5 stars. If you want to try them on in person, if you want to check out the glasses face to face, head to their brick and mortar inside of Park Meadows Mall. Great store, great staff, super friendly, all big sports fans. I've stopped in there a couple times, talked to them about the Avs, DNVR, all of that stuff. So just a great company all around. And like I said, they gave you some really high quality shades that look great. They don't look like you bought them at the gas station by the register at a reasonable price, and even more reasonable when you go to shadyrays.com. Use that code DNVR. You're going to get 50% off 2 pairs of polarized shades. Also brought to you guys by Pins and Aces, the official golf apparel partner of ALLCITY and DNVR. They just dropped the PHNX Polo, Pins and Aces Polo. Did you see it?
Is it the one with the sunshine on it, or didn't?
No,
okay.
I think that's a new Nugget shirt. It's a Pins and Aces PHNX Polo. It's sick. I don't know if Tiff looks like she's trying to find it. Yeah, no, it's great. It looks awesome. And really, I almost wore my button up today, but just a little too windy out. We're supposed to get some rain, but it's.
I remember we discussed it.
I know.
I'm not wearing mine.
I had it in my hand, and I was like, it's just a little too gross out today.
It's a little too gross.
But super comfortable, super breathable, and it's perfect for the summertime, not just if you're out on the golf course. But head on over to pinsandaces.com, use the code DNVR. You're going to get 15% off your first order and free shipping. Can't find it. No. Yeah, I'll say head to our social. I know it's there. I know it's on the PHNX social, but it really is. It looked really cool. Great looking polo. It's breathable. It's light. I said it before. What I love about the button-up, I've always had beef with men's button-up shirts. It's the only fabric on earth that doesn't stretch or breathe. Pins and Aces, not the case. Very stretchy, very breathable, super comfortable. Can wear it anywhere. Looks great. Pinsandaces.com. Use the code DNVR. You're going to get 15% off your first order and free shipping. Jesse Montano, Meghan Angley, Tiff on the board.
Hold on. I found it.
Did we find it? We might have it. Ooh, dude, that is beautiful.
That is adorable.
Oh, so that's a dope graphic. I love that.
I think it appeals to everyone. Beautiful, adorable, no matter who you are.
Look at. Oh, see, that's not even the one that I saw.
So this is the one I saw, and I saw sunshine, but it's more correctly ice cream cone, and it's adorable. Seriously. So there's a PHNX inspired.
Yeah, it's the is theirs called Nux too? The little cactus guy.
Yeah, that's so cute.
But it's great. That one's even better. I'm gonna go fucking order that one because I was gonna order the other one, but I was like, well, that would be kind of weird to wear the PHNX stuff on our shows. I'd definitely be doing that.
Awesome.
That's sick. I love that.
This is for the DNVR Midsummer Classic on July 21st.
Go to the Big Drive Energy page.
Yeah, I got you.
Because I think they're the ones that were sharing it. It's a great looking polo. Like I said, I didn't even see that one. I love that little logo. That little guy's so cute.
He is cute.
I don't see it.
There it is, right there.
Oh, look at that.
Ice. Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That is super cool.
So like I said, it's a little
love that.
PHNX Nux guy.
Little cactus.
Yeah, a little cactus
Did you see
foam
they have
finger.
gas station ads?
I did see
I
that.
think that's so cool.
I know. I saw the one that Leah posted of her like,
That's
head
what I saw.
inside.
I wanted to comment like, this is amazing. I was like, is that? I don't want her to think I'm being sarcastic. I really think.
Wow, super cool, Leah.
No, I really think this is cool.
Wow, sweet, you're at a gas station. It really was one of those things where I was like, damn, I'd love to see this, but like, what am I going to drive to Arizona?
No, exactly.
To go see it. But I seriously did it. I was like, gosh, I want to go get like a tank of gas there, just like out of
if
solidarity.
If your buddy is ever getting gas,
Ooh, I
happens
should tell
to
him.
see,
I should tell him.
Keep an eye out.
I should tell him, yeah. Go to Circle K. Send me a video. Megan, let's really, I think we kind of brought this back to how it does relate to the Avs, because that really is part of the reason, the biggest reason that we want to talk about this stuff is because I do think that there is a chance means something to the Avs. And even if it doesn't directly, again, like I'm just looking at a guy like Devon Taves, how you may have to handle that if you're uncertain about being able to bring him back. You're right. I think it all kind of starts with Bowen Byram. What you're doing with him, what kind of does that leave you as options beyond that? And it's going to make for an interesting summer, but I do think that the Maple Leafs kind of hold the key to some of these dominoes falling. If you see Auston Matthews traded out of Toronto, I imagine it's going to be a pretty chaotic summer all around the league.
Absolutely, because there are people who are looking to fill positional needs in free agency, but if there are options like that beyond,
right,
teams are absolutely going to want to consider that, because I think just even at the Avs, looking for the market for centermen in free agency is a little bit thin. They might be looking to get creative. And I think that this is a domino to fall, because I think there are other teams like a Vancouver that need to shed cap and need to make some decisions about players as well that are also going to need to part ways with people. And I think this is going to be more than just Toronto having to field decisions like this.
Yeah.
But I think maybe some of the biggest is in Toronto because of the caliber of player that Auston Matthews is.
Totally.
What he means to the league, his visibility as a player in the league is you just can't
undersell it.
No.
And it's why we've made the joke a bunch of times about him going back to Arizona. But it's for what you're talking about. Like, all jokes aside, you cannot measure, if that were to happen, which, again, it's just a complete hypothetical. If Auston Matthews were to leave Toronto in free agency and sign with the Arizona Coyotes, that is landscape shifting on several levels. Not just on the ice, but like you're literally talking about, and again, we made the joke a bunch earlier this week, but like that guy now owns the city of Phoenix.
King Coyote.
He's King Coyote forever. You know what I mean? Like, and it means huge things for the organization. That probably means that organization, if he's signing there, that means they got their arena deal figured out. But you know, that shifts them from being, that brings the type of stability that we've been talking about recently with what the Coyotes need. They need stability. They need seasons where it's not they're being threatened to move or not have an arena. They're getting kicked out. They're this, that, and the other. Bringing in a guy like Auston Matthews, that now solidifies you as a top team in the league. That probably means you get an outdoor game, maybe not in Arizona, but you probably participate in one. You probably are hosting, an all-star game. You're probably hosting a draft. It just completely changes things in what we keep referring to as a very important market for the NHL in Arizona. Big, huge market in Phoenix in terms of just sheer population and size, market share, things like that. It means like these are all significant moves, and it bleeds over into how this stuff is handled later. How does the salary cap affect this? And all of this stuff means something to the Avs as well, because they will eventually have similar decisions to make.
Where do you think Ryan O'Reilly goes?
Here's what's hard about Ryan O'Reilly. That dude has shown in his career over and over that he goes to the highest bidder. He follows the money, which you cannot blame the guy for.
No.
He's a notoriously tough negotiator, him and his agent. And he goes where he feels he's valued the most. And, he has his cup, but he's an ultra competitive guy. So my guess is that he goes somewhere where they're ready to win, about ready to win. It's realistic for them. I don't see him as being like a Chicago target because, they have a lot of money to spend. They're going to want to insulate Connor Bedard, but I don't see that situation
being appealing to Ryan O'Reilly.
Right. So, I mean, I really do. I don't know if the Avs are a possibility because of the long-term question marks with the cap and where the Avs will kind of fall, and the long-term question marks around Gabe Landeskog and things like that. But I think a team like the Avs in that kind of competitive range is where you end up seeing Ryan O'Reilly. Again, without having cap friendly in front of me and looking, the Rangers, maybe the Devils, and not all of these teams are fits. I'm just saying these types of teams. The Islanders, I think, are an interesting type of team for him. Vegas. I don't know. Depending on what your deal is with Mark Stone.
That would be a nightmare.
It would be a nightmare. Eichel and O'Reilly down the middle. I just don't know. It all depends on how healthy is Mark Stone.
Right.
Is his back still a long-term issue? Anyone that's watching him in the playoffs, as good as he's been, you can tell the dude is hurting a lot, and he's getting a lot of treatments. He's laid out on the benches coming out of intermissions, things like that. So I just don't know. But that's the kind of team where I see him sticking around. And I think what you said earlier is correct. Unless they are moving on from one of the core four, I think it'd be really hard for Toronto
to keep him. I agree.
Boston?
I actually was thinking Boston because there are some players that might be done.
Yep. And just straight coming off the cap because they're retiring or leaving or whatever. Yeah, I could see that. Trying to replace Patrice Bergeron.
Exactly.
He's not Patrice Bergeron, but fuck, he's pretty good.
Right.
Pretty close. As close as you might get, right?
That's an interesting one.
Yeah. I mean, really, and again, like I said, this was without having cap friendly in front of me.
Right. I don't know if they could make that work.
Right, but I mean, that's the type of team that I see him landing on, and that's why I think Colorado is probably in the mix. They were in the mix for him at the deadline.
Right.
And you don't have Gabe Landeskog $7 million this year. I don't know. Maybe you say, we're going to sign him to a 3-year deal, and we'll deal with next summer's cap next summer. Once we see how the cap is going up, whatever. I don't know. But I think Ryan O'Reilly goes to a contender. He's in the back half of his career now. He wants to win. He's an ultra-competitive guy, and he's still very good. I agreed with you when you said it at the time, and I agree with you said it earlier today. I thought he was what gave them, the Maple Leafs, their biggest change in dynamic. I thought he was what gave them their biggest chance, their best chance to win a cup in the last, under this core. And not having him back, I think, is a huge blow to that group because you kind of go back to the, are we the one-dimensional offensive Leafs again? And, it's going to be interesting to see where he lands because I think he's got to be the biggest name out there this summer, right?
I think that's not even a hard stretch because it's a weird free agency market this year. But for that reason, I think there are going to be people making really competitive offers. Mm-hmm. They know what kind of a difference maker he can bring in. What he brings more than just, so there's production, but there's reliability. He can hold a line more accountable defensively. Mm-hmm. And just the leadership qualities that he brings about too. It's hard to put a price tag on that. And so I think that is why he, like you were saying, is probably going to go to the highest bidder.
Go to the highest bidder. And then the other part of this, and part of the reason why I think on paper the Avs make a ton of sense for him, because everything that I've heard about Ryan O'Reilly, I started covering the team after he left, day to day, was the work ethic.
Right.
Was that he's kind of one that you and I would be familiar with, like Andrew Cogliano level, putting in the work, staying after, when everyone else leaves, he's still there, first on the ice kind of thing. And that's something that I think, you can't teach that kind of stuff, and it's invaluable to have in your organization. So he's not a hometown discount kind of guy. He's not I like to, I got good friends here. I want to stay. He's show me the money. That's where I'm going. But I do think it'll be, hey, contenders, show me the money.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's not going to be Columbus. Show me the money.
Right. Megan, you got anything else today?
Is Dallas done?
Yo.
Honestly, I didn't actually mean to make that a new segment. Yes or no?
The wheels
you have 5 seconds.
Came off. They had to issue a statement today because of the way the fans throwing stuff on the ice.
The final 21 seconds of that period.
Had to postpone, had to delay the end of the second period. I don't know if you saw the videos of the Vegas players coming back out of the tunnel for the start of the third, finishing the second, having popcorn and sodas thrown at them coming out of the tunnel. Popcorn ends up going onto the ice, so that kind of delayed the start of the period again. And the ownership actually issued a statement saying, like, this is not what we're about.
No.
This is not a representation of the fans, the whatever, the team, this, that, and the other. And for that to happen in a game like that, Jamie Benn loses his mind.
No, exactly.
Less than 2 minutes into the game, probably now suspended. I have to imagine that gets 2 games. That was with every replay watch, that got worse.
Oh my, it was just vicious.
It was vicious. It was, we talked about the Cale Makar thing and even the Jordan Eberle thing, and we all pretty much agreed, even as bad as the Jordan Eberle thing was, none of it was malicious.
No.
We all had our thoughts about each individual play, but we were like, it's unfortunate. You got to be in better control. You're responsible for that. But no one was trying to hurt anybody. That looked like Jamie Benn was trying to hurt Mark Stone.
Absolutely. Because there's like initial face wash. But even then, when he's going down the ice, he's using his stick.
I'll take it a step further, Megan. If you watch that replay, Stone goes down and Jamie Benn goes here, and then he reloads and to come down even harder. So it's not even, had he gone with I fell on top of him, you could maybe even make the argument of it was just two guys falling. But you see him look down, he's going, and he pulls up and then follows through right in the face. That's just unacceptable.
From your leadership, too.
Right.
Not that it's acceptable from anyone, but especially that's where I'm like, is Dallas done?
Right.
That's your leadership.
Right.
Is Dallas done?
Is Dallas done the way that things went? I don't know.
I don't know
you
for
could
real.
maybe see them, but I think they do. I think they are. Could I see them doing our backs are against the wall?
Pulling out.
We're going to put everything on the table to pull out one win in front of our home fans? Sure. But if you're without Jamie Benn for 2 games, you're done. Max Domi gets fined this morning.
Yeah, slashing. Just
Tiff, did you watch the game?
I saw highlights of it. I didn't get to watch it.
But even in the highlights, you're sitting here nodding along to all this. Tiff is saying she saw the highlights, and it's like, even in the highlights, it came across what a train wreck it was.
The highlights, the condensed game,
Yeah.
I didn't get to watch the full
Right,
game,
right.
But God, it was just messy. It was just problematic and messy and just.
It almost drives the point home even more. If you can tell from the condensed game review that Dallas came unglued.
Oh yeah.
It was legitimately shocking because you expected, for everything we've heard about Dallas this year and the type of team they were and in the playoffs and 2 really tough series against Minnesota and then a really great series against Seattle. You expected a pushback at home and they were going to come out and play hard. And I heard, PK Subban and Chris Chelios were talking about, and I mean, they were both saying Jamie Benn needs to be suspended outright. But they're like, he's trying to get the team fired up. That's where what you're talking about is as a leader, that's what you go with? That's what you go with.
Right. It's not that the code of conduct there isn't anything that could be reciprocated by Stone in a productive way to the course of the game. And then he just doesn't take accountability for it either in the position that it put his team in. Mm-hmm. And that's a problem.
Are you referring to him not speaking to the media after the game?
And then he's spoken today and tries to suggest that he fell.
See, and that's the part that's just crazy. Watch the replay. Anybody with 2 sets of eyes.
I probably shouldn't have done that, but I was falling. Something to that effect.
It's again, if you don't see the reload and him follow through, you could sell me on that. I would still be skeptical, but you could sell me on it. When you watch the replay, it's clear. That wasn't you trying to catch your balance, dude.
No, because there was a problem before they fall to the ice.
Right.
And so he's clearly just upset and reacting to that.
Right. If he wanted to do that to get everyone going, wait for Stone to get up, get in his face.
Exactly.
Get in his face, shove him up against the wall, cause a little skirmish. Again, I still think that's
I would still discourage that.
Right, because you're probably going to take a penalty either way. But that's at least a more productive way where it's hey, I'm willing to drag our team into the fight this way. I'm willing to get my hands dirty to get everyone going. That was just outright dirty play.
Not a level playing field. Guy on the ice, pretty defenseless.
Right. And so, and you could just see it all boiling over as the game went on. Jake Ottinger gets pulled, before the 10-minute mark. That game may have been too much for them to reasonably bounce back from, especially when in that Domi skirmish, you see the look on Nick Hague's face where you can just tell Vegas is gotcha. You guys are done. And Vegas is a veteran team.
Oh,
they've been
absolutely.
here before. They understand. They're up 3-0 in the Western Conference Final. They are saying, do not get sucked into any of that stuff because they're going to come unglued.
Yeah.
And it's just going to benefit us.
Let them.
Right. Let them. That was more than 5 seconds. Sorry.
So sorry. Yeah, honestly.
All right. I do think that is it for today. I'm trying to shoot the puck. Yeah.
Side of Mark's.
But you know, it really was. It was shocking to watch from a guy like Jamie Benn, who's been to the Stanley Cup final, been to multiple Western Conference finals now. Yeah, you know, I don't know if they bounce back. I'm anxious to see what the game count is for something that I think for the first time you could say this playoffs looked pretty malicious. Like I said, I think that's it for today. It'll be me, Rudo, AJ tomorrow. Megan's off the next couple of days. No show on Monday. But then we'll be back on Tuesday. We'll have a special guest in studio. One of our colleagues will be joining us as we got some vacations coming up for some of the crew here. Jesse Montano, Meghan Angley, Tiff on the board, making sure you guys can see us and hear us. Thank you guys all so much for listening. Big shout out to Dave McCarthy for joining us today at Dave A. McCarthy on Twitter. We will talk to all you guys tomorrow.